Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Nemo Propaganda here, bringing you another subwoofer review. You guys know I love subwoofers and their performance with respect to two-channel music. That's what we talk about on this YouTube channel. We review speakers too and other things, but for a long time now, a few months at least, we've been on a pretty good subwoofer kick. So here we've got the REL T9X. It is the flagship of the TX range. There's one right here in front of me. The other one is tucked down in the corner, as you can see. I do have a pair here because I use monoblocks, and monoblock users do need two subwoofers. I did also use just one by using the IotaVX integrated amplifier as well. So all of my listening impressions are going to be whether you're going to buy just a single or a pair. With a pair, you'll just have the benefits of a pair, a wider stage, more bass quantity overall, the ability for it to kind of project from an ink black background and things like that. So a pair is pretty cool and definitely recommended, but not required by any means, especially if your room is about my size, which is only 10 feet wide, 12 feet deep, 9-foot ceilings. I'll be honest, one in my room, plenty, definitely did not need the pair. The pair was just like, oh, that's cool too. You know what I mean? It's like if your car's got like 700 horsepower, like, and then like you add another 100 horsepower to it, like it's cool. You know what I mean? You like definitely didn't need it though. Anyhow, I digress. We'll take you through this review the same way we usually do, which is gonna be, we're gonna do standout features first, listening impressions, kind of what it sounds like. We'll do some comparisons, and then we'll wrap it up, okay? I'll leave some specs on screen so you guys can check that stuff out yourself. Standout features, first and foremost, this is a small subwoofer, honestly, guys. I would consider this medium size, or yeah, medium I would say is fair. Even though it's the largest of the TX subwoofers, it is a medium-sized subwoofer, especially with respect to its vertical height. It's quite short, and in the room, it never calls attention to itself visually, which wouldn't be a bad thing, honestly, because it is a very good-looking subwoofer. So let's talk about the looks real quick, because we've got some standout features here. First and foremost, the way the grille is spaced off the front baffle, about 3/4 of an inch, and sits on some really nice stainless steel posts. I think it's a great look. It's also got some bevel cut angles into it to help it match the radius cabinet edges. Those small attentions to details, the polished hardware around the front of the driver, around the back of the plate amplifier, the chassis mounted RCAs, I love that attention to detail. Real quick, I want to talk about attention to detail real quick because some of you guys complain about it, and I just want to address that. I've seen in the comments, people say stuff like, oh, REL puts their brand all over the subwoofer, it's over-branded. I get why you're saying that, but hear me out, guy, hear me out. I think people who say that have never had one in their room. The reason I say that is because if you're looking at a product shot of the subwoofer where the subwoofer is just like at eye level and it's got like thousands of watts of like photo lights on it, yeah, you can see all that branding, but that's a product shot. It's supposed to show off everything. When the subwoofer's placed in the room, like you can't really see any of that. You can barely just see the driver through the grille, which is honestly like a really nice aesthetic touch. This logo up top, you can't see this, or even you definitely can't read it. When the subwoofer's placed in the room. The logo's on the feet. I mean, you guys tell me. You're watching this video right now. I've got thousands of watts of photography lighting on me right now. This is a 1080p video. Can you see the logo on the feet? I don't think you can. So again, if you think it's overly branded, you might just be hopping on a bandwagon without realizing it. And I would encourage you to have one in your home first and make your own judgment. To me, it is perfect aesthetically. And all of the kind of details, I would say they're subtle. It's all subtle details, which I think is great. So some other standout features are going to be your connection options. You've got 3 of them. High level input, everyone knows about that one already. Line level input, kind of like your most common input. And then a LFE input with its own gain or volume knob. So LFE input has its own gain and volume knob, as does the high level input. Why is that? Well, that way you can connect a pair of REL subwoofers to your main speakers to like help extend them and give them like more bass and more authority to make them truly full range. And in a theater environment, on top of that high level connection, you can also plug in the LFE cables to each subwoofer. So when those LFE tracks come through, the subwoofer gives you the rumbles. And when those LFE tracks aren't happening, you still have the benefit of the subwoofer making your main speakers more full range. You need to be able to adjust the gains independently to accomplish that. So that's a pretty cool feature this has. I've never been able to use it because this isn't really a home theater channel, nor do I have an AVR or a processor that has LFE outputs. I only have line out. So my options for this sub were line out or high level. I tried both and used high level for most of the review. A quick note on high level. REL's high level is not the same as other companies' high level input. Most other subwoofers, high level input is a legacy connection. It's for people that have no other choice. You really don't want to use it unless it's your only option. Maybe you have a tube amplifier with no pre-outs. Okay, go ahead, use high level. REL's high level is engineered and designed to be the superior connection method. So on a REL subwoofer, you definitely want to take advantage of that and use their high level input. Again, other companies' high level input, legacy connection, not preferred. So if you have, say, Bowers & Wilkins subwoofer, SVS subwoofer, JL Audio subwoofer, don't use their high level input unless it's your only option. You will get better performance through line level. I've seen this in the comments so many times. There's so much confusion about this, guys. REL is the only subwoofer company. I think there's another one in England, honestly, that has a pretty good high level circuit, but they're the only one I know about that is designed specifically to have a good high level circuit. So anyhow, other standout features, passive radiator, sealed box design, 10-inch front firing driver, the passive's down firing. Do keep in mind a front firing 10-inch active and a down firing passive does not mean you have the base of two 10-inch drivers or the moving mass of two 10-inch drivers. You do at the passive radiator's tuning frequency. Above that, this is going to behave like a traditionally sealed box 10-inch design. The whole point of the passive radiator is it's going to allow you to have bass extension more commonly associated with a ported design without the size associated with a ported design. And REL being REL makes sure that for the most part, actually not just for the most part, I don't even know why I said that, for all intents and purposes, it is just as tight, quick, speedy, and articulate as a sealed subwoofer should be. So what the heck does it sound like? Oh, and if I didn't already say it, another standout feature, Class AB amplification. So what does it sound like? Well, any descriptor you want to use for sound quality, guys, speed, articulation, bass note distinction, fidelity, whatever, you know what I mean? Just make a list. This is great at. It's just that simple. It's great at. It's one of the best at. That's kind of what REL does. They are an SQ subwoofer company. SQ stands for sound quality. There are really only two kinds of subwoofers, and then there's a spectrum in between, of course. There are SQ subwoofers, like REL, and then there are SPL subwoofers, right? And it's important to know the difference. If you don't know the difference, you're not ready to buy a subwoofer yet. But hear me out, I'll explain the difference to you very briefly. SQ subwoofers, generally you're gonna get a little bit less power for your money and a little bit less extension for your money. Instead, a lot of your money is gonna go to lightweight moving mass, high quality amplification, a experience where the bass can still play fairly loud, still extend fairly low, but have excellent sound quality, bass note distinction, fidelity, detail, textures, speed, transient response, all is gonna be top level. It's gonna integrate with your speakers very well. You shouldn't even be able to guess the crossover point between speaker and subwoofer. The bass is never gonna draw attention to itself. The subwoofer should never localize in your room. Those are all the characteristics of a good SQ subwoofer, which is the REL T9X. A good SPL subwoofer, conversely, is going to give you a little bit more power for the money, a little bit more output for the money, a little bit more extension for the money. The downside is they are going to draw attention to themselves when the bass pressurizes your room. The bass is going to be more aggressive, its attack is going to be harder, its slam is going to be harder, but you will notice it in the room. It is not going to integrate in your system as well. I don't care what anyone says. If you have an SPL first design, you can kind of tell where the crossover point is. You just can. And in a worst case scenario, if it's not like just perfectly integrated, it can even muddy up the mid-range if it's too much of an SPL first design. So that's kind of the difference, I guess. If that was too much of a mouthful, I'll try to make it super simple. If you like your subwoofer to call attention to itself, when the bass attack happens, you want to know your subwoofer's doing its job. You want to know that it's on. You're more of an SPL customer. If you want a subwoofer that's going to sound more of an extension of your main speakers or sound like it's coming from an ink black background where you close your eyes and you have no idea where the subwoofer is in the room, but you still have good, powerful bass that pressurizes the room, you're an SQ customer and you want an SQ customer subwoofer. So I've told you what it sounds like, guys. In a nutshell, pretty darn good. And I can really wrap it up with this one simple phrase: highly resolving. I never thought I would use that phrase to describe a subwoofer, but that was kind of the whole conclusion, I guess you can say, when I take all my thoughts and I get rid of all of them and I try to describe the T9X as simply as possible, highly resolving is the phrase that comes to mind. It does all the other things a great subwoofer should do, and on top of that is highly resolving. Sense of realism is almost second to none. If you listen to real music or fake music being like EDM, but real music especially, when a bass guitar is strummed or a kick drum is kicked, the sense of realism is just, it's almost like hard to describe. If you've never experienced it, like, you're probably just like watching me on YouTube and you're like, what's this guy on about? You know what I mean? He sounds like some like cheesy magazine editor just like gassing up this product. I'm not doing it for no reason here, guys. Like, I'm not paid for this review. I'm not a full-time YouTube reviewer even. Hell, I don't even consider myself a YouTube reviewer, guys. This is just something I do for fun and for free to try to help out people that are in the market to buy stuff. I bought so much stuff myself out of curiosity that I started a YouTube channel, started reviewing it just to help people out. And then companies started reaching out to me and be like, hey, you want to review my stuff? And I was like, hell yeah. So like, this is just for fun for me. Anything I tell you, it's just like really my impression. Anyhow, let's get into some comparisons. The pictures on screen will show you really what I mean when I say this is a compact subwoofer. Anyhow, let's start with REL's own T5X as the first comparison. The T5X is $689, the T9X is $1449. Quite the price disparity, quite the size difference as well. The T5X is a fantastic subwoofer and it is a SQ first design. That being said, the T9X does everything the T5X does and does it better, does it with more authority, more SPL capability, more extension, more fidelity, more resolving. It's just better in every way. Now, with all that said though, I'll be honest, a pair of T5X in this room is more than good enough for me, or even a single T9X. It's one of those things like the T5X is so good, I think that's all most people will need if they have a room about this size, 10 feet wide, 12 feet deep, 9 feet ceilings. I don't think most people will need more than a pair of T5Xs. But if you've got the money and you want more, T9X does everything just a little bit better. It's almost like the T5X. Let's give you a car analogy. It's been a while, right? T5X, guys, it's like a Porsche Cayman, just the standard model. Whereas the T9X is like the Porsche Cayman GTS. The GTS is the top of the Cayman range. I know some of you car guys are going to be like, Nemo, what about the Porsche Cayman GT4? The GT4 is a limited production model. Let's not talk about it. Anyhow, let's move on and compare this to REL's own HT1205 as well. The HT1205 is $800. It's a 12-inch driver. It's 500 watts RMS. On the spectrum of SPL and SQ, it's kind of right in the middle. It is REL's theater first subwoofer and designed to be more affordable. You lose things like the gloss finish, the high level input, the polished hardware, all the things that make this thing beautiful. You know what I mean? They're just, instead you're getting a vinyl finish. It's still quite a good looking subwoofer. You get 500 watts RMS instead and a carbon glass driver that is quite beautiful in my opinion. So being a little bit more in the middle between SPL and SQ, the HT1205 will not have as good of sound quality and fidelity as the T9X. It will instead give you a little bit more output, a little bit more extension, and a little bit SPL. So if you're between the two, the size is somewhat similar. The 9X is just a little bit shorter. I'm sure you saw it in the picture. The 9X, again, it's just going to give you all those things you're going to associate with sound quality, fidelity, speed, transients. The 9X is better. There was one area where I felt they were about even, and that was actually the responsiveness. The ability of the subwoofer to start and stop when it's supposed to, and the absence of overhang. I found the HT1205 to be among the quickest subwoofers I have heard. And the T9X as well. So with respect to speed and transients, I'll actually say they're even. It's one area that 1205 is so good. I own it too. If it looks like I keep looking down at the ground, I'm looking at it. It's right there. Anyhow. Let's move on and talk about another brand, REL T9X versus Rhythmic F12 SE. These are both SQ subwoofers. This is interesting now. The T9X is $1449. The Rhythmic F12 SE is $1149, so they're somewhat close in price. The Rhythmic is a 12-inch sealed only design, and it is quite a bit larger, so it is important to keep in mind. Being larger means it will have a little bit more extension and quite a bit more SPL. Them both being SQ designs, guys, I gotta admit here, they both do it very well. both, when it comes to sound quality, it was more a case of, oh, over here, this one's a little better. Over there, that one was a little bit better. But overall, when it comes down to it, while the Rhythmic F12 had a little bit more, well, I'll have quite a bit more SPL and quite a bit more extension, honestly. The T9X had that last like 5 or 10% more fidelity at the just maximum limit. If you are looking for the most resolving subwoofer, the 9X took the edge there. For international customers, your pricing is going to be different. The Rhythmic's going to be more like $1,500 because of the freight charge. And again, being larger, you know, it's going to have the benefit of being larger. Whereas the T9X had the benefit of the being slightly more resolving in, you know, almost every area. It's just like, just a little bit more. It gets to the point where we're like splitting hairs in some of these places, because like, I have both subwoofers here. I have the Rhythmic F12 SE and I have the REL T9X here, right? And when I play them, like, I just enjoy both of them a lot. I have to really, really critically listen. While the Rhythmic extends lower, the T9X, I never felt like it didn't extend enough. While the T9X has a little bit more fidelity, I never felt like the Rhythmic was lacking in fidelity. I would say just pick the one you think visually looks better perhaps, or has the feature set you're looking for. They're both fantastic in my opinion, and great options for US customers. I'm gonna throw a picture on screen, but we're not gonna do a comparison here. This is just to illustrate size. Here we have the Rhythmic FVX12 next to the T9X. The Rhythmic FVX12, for those of you that are not familiar with it, is the almost identical size and dimensions of an SVS PB2000, which is a very popular ported subwoofer. I just really wanted to illustrate, because when I say this is compact, guys, like I really mean it. And for what it can do, for being as compact as it is one of the more impressive aspects of it. Just watching this on camera, or knowing that it's the largest of the T range, the TX range, you might think it's big. This is compact, medium-sized subwoofer that is still capable of very powerful, very room-filling bass on a level of sound quality that is just so good. Anyhow, next comparison. Let's talk about this versus SVS's Micro 3000. That's another newer subwoofer that's fairly popular. Quite a bit smaller, important to keep that in mind. Now, the Micro 3000 is going to be more on the SPL side. Being more on the SPL side, you guessed it, it's going to be able to have more of an aggressive attack. It's going to pressurize your room in more of like an aggressive way. But the downside is it will call some attention to itself. Some people are going to love that. Some people are going to hate that. I'm a little bit of both. I love how aggressive the attack of the SVS Micro 3000 is. For how small it is, you almost can't believe how much bass is coming out of it. But it also does localize in my room just a little bit and call just a little bit of attention to itself. The T9X, conversely, is, you know, being on the SQ side, is just going to do all the things an SQ subwoofer can do. It's still going to pressurize my room really good. It's still going to have great attack, not as violently and aggressive to the point it calls attention to itself, but still quite good and never call attention to itself. So the comparison of REL and SVS is almost one that should never happen. You should never actually be cross-shopping the two, because remember earlier in this video I said, if you don't know the difference between an SQ subwoofer and an SPL subwoofer, you're not ready to buy a subwoofer yet. You need to know the difference, and you need to know which one you want. Because if you're interested in an SPL subwoofer, you're going to look at like SVS, JL Audio, Power Sound, and all those like SPL brands. If you're more interested in an SQ subwoofer, you're going to be looking at like REL, Rhythmic, Bowers & Wilkins, right? So yeah, again, that's the comparison, but I really don't think most people are going to cross-shop those two. At least you shouldn't be. It would be kind of like cross-shopping a, you know, small sports car like the Porsche Cayman versus a S-Class Mercedes S560, right? Both are great cars, but a Mercedes S560 is like a big flagship luxury sedan, while a Porsche Cayman is a phenomenal sports car, right? They're just totally different vehicles. Doesn't make sense to cross-shop. Anyhow, last comparison, REL T9X, KEF KC62, let's go. The KEF KC62 is going to be right in the middle between the SPL camp and the SQ camp. It's right in the middle. It does a little bit of the SPL dance. It does a little bit of the SQ dance. It's kind of a jack of all trades. It's just really an overall fantastic subwoofer. It is tiny, keep that in mind, so it can't play tremendously loud, and it is $1,500, which is just $51 more than the T9X. The T9X is going to play more consistently because the KEF KC62 does have an active DSP. If you don't know what I mean by that, just go and watch the KEF KC62 video I did. I'm not going to get into it here. The T9X is going to give you way more of the SQ experience and more of a consistent experience overall from top to bottom. So that wraps up the comparisons, guys. At the end of the day, there's not a whole lot more I can tell you about this subwoofer. I can tell you subjectively, I freaking love it. When it comes to home audio, I'm a huge SQ subwoofer guy. Car audio, I love a good SPL setup. But for home audio, I love the fidelity an SQ setup brings to the table. I like not being able to localize my bass at all. I love wondering if my subwoofer is even on until the bass part of the song comes in. I like that experience a lot. And for that reason, I love the T9X. Its visual appeal helps a lot as well. I am a stickler for good aesthetics. I really do like it. At the end of the day, you know, if you're looking for a subwoofer that's going to pressurize your room, have amazing sound quality, yet never draw attention to itself, this is a good subwoofer for you. If you have any questions, let's talk about it in the comments below. I think I've talked enough for one day. Until next time, later.